Hi there, it's Dr. JOYLYN Sparkles, and welcome to your Power Hour. This is your time to put what's on your mind, on my mind, and we will put our heads and hearts together and find a way to go from stuck to happy as fuck in as short amount of time as possible. Why? Let me correct this here. Because your time is valuable. At least that's how I look at it. I hate wasting time. I can't stand when people waste my time. And let me tell you what is the grandest waste of time that I can't stand is fluff. I do not like fluff. And people just telling you what they think you want to hear. And it just keeps you stuck. And we've had enough of that, don't you think? So today, we're talking about the power of why. And a lot of people talk about this in different ways. And since you're here, you just get to hear my way of looking at this. And a lot of this is informed by you guys, the questions that come in, different client interactions that I've had over the week. Astrology will play into some part, what I'm currently reading. I bring it all in. Because I got my start as a relationship coach, and I started off working a lot with couples. But really, I found that how I shine as a relationship coach is finding how anything and everything is related and connected. And it actually creates a fast track because we can apply what we know in one area of our life where we excel to the parts of our lives where we're not doing quite as stellarly as we'd like, but that's part of your gift as a gifted person. There will come challenges from being a gifted child. You got shit really fast. And so now you've actually learned that everything's going to happen that way. You got reinforced. That was just your early life experience. And I'm here to tell you, and this is what I have just learned recently, some of your giftedness is actually coming from trauma. That trauma could actually be a gift. Early trauma. The part where it's like infancy. And what happens in infancy that I'm learning, this is so exciting because now I get to build this into the programs from now on out, which Love Yourselves is coming up. We dissociate. When a threat is perceived as inescapable, which if you think about a little tiny human being, that when they cry and whoever comes in mad or mean, because they're fucking tired, because, they're adults with lives. Or maybe they actually are mean and didn't want to have a kid or whatever it was, that seems inescapable because you can't help but have needs. But when you call out with the need, it is not being responded to consistently in a loving way. Or perhaps you might get a parenting mismatch. This I know happened with me. I am what they call a slow to warm up. I to this day am. When you put me in a room of people, I am quieter than normal because I'm kind of scanning and observing the situation. I do believe then there's attachment styles and all these attachment theories, but there's called a slow to warm up baby, that the baby will actually be that way, but then have a mother who's mothered 2 to 3 other children. I say 2 to 3 because I have 2 older sisters and a twin, so 2.5, but and having younger siblings and being used to interacting face to face. Oh, and it seems inescapable. I need a little bit of space. I need some warm up time, and here's this person in my face all the time. And it gets stressful, and in a way that the brain perceives it isn't escapable, so we actually dissociate. We dissociate means we go inside. This outside world is threatening as fuck and I can't get away from it, so what I'll do is I'll escape. This will also happen in early childhood trauma. This also happened to me as well. In an actual abuse situation that it just seemed too much for me to handle, I actually sort of left my body and kind of watched it. Like I wasn't gone. I was hovering around, but I seriously actually remember the event almost from a bird's eye view. That's dissociation, but here's what it can actually do for you. It helped you tune out the outside world, and guess what's needed for academic success? Tuning out the outside world because there's a lot of distractions. TV, older and younger siblings, bad food, food smells, whatever it is, like other people in the classroom. And if you can tune that out and tune into whatever it is that you've got going on in front of you, you actually create a pathway, a clearer path for information coming in. So you get it real fast. When other people who are more easily distracted are having trouble really connecting the dots. So it's time for us to really see that there's actually a gift available in everything. And that's actually one thing I learned from improv comedy that I like all the time. Everything's a gift. Somebody will actually they'll look at me and they'll okay, Bob, you're 40 pounds overweight. What do you think you're going to do about this? I'm not Bob. I've struggled with eating disorder so long that you're actually calling out something that's really bringing something up. It's a gift. You get to play with being somebody else. And all of the trauma, all of the events, all of the things that happened to us, in truth, we had some inkling of before we came, kind of forgot. So now we're kind of getting this, oh shit. And now remembering that. And so now we can play with it. Okay, how am I going to happen to it? Okay? So that's the preface of where I'm coming from. Because a lot of people will talk about finding the why. And a lot of this is especially in business mindset. Find the why for what you're going to do. Because what it really does is connect you with a piece of information, an intrinsic motivator. Because if we're going for success and we're going for money, a lot of times it isn't enough to carry us forward. It has to be something of, why did we start doing this in the first place? And when we get into personal work like this, and especially when we get into trauma and what's called the shadow work and looking at the shadow sides of us and getting out of this emotional reactivity, and even sometimes in health journeys, when we recognize, hey, we've gotten a little too far off the rails, eating poorly, my joints are inflamed, all this, we decide, okay, things are going to change. We go, but then we get into it, and then we're kind of doing it for doing sake. And we have rules and we follow them because that's just what we're doing. We're just going to follow rules because that's what I'm doing. And I do this shadow work and I dig in and I dig in and I look and I look and I look and I look for other things that could be wrong with me. And sadly, you will see this reinforced outside of yourself, especially in the political, cultural context of look for where you might be racist. Look for where you might be biased. Look for this. When really, that can lead us down a rabbit hole, because here's the truth. Seek and you will find. If you look for it, it'll be there. The problem, what we've all been doing, is looking for what's wrong with us. So we keep finding things to work on. This also played out in my marriage. I knew we had some communication issues, okay? I mean, you put a man and a woman together, there's going to be communication issues. We just weren't raised and gender trained to communicate in the same way. Our brains, by virtue of different hormones that it's been bathed in, will also perceive and interpret information differently. But then I kept looking for the communication issues, so they kept popping up. So there was always something for us to work on, to where we were hardly ever enjoying each other. We were always working on something. And this can happen in relationships. It can happen with ourselves, with our bodies. So we need to know and remember why it is we started doing this, and to keep hold of that so that we don't get lost in the doing. And I'm going to put forth right here and now that the reason we did this is because, A, we had a recognition it wasn't working anymore. It just was actually ineffective. When we were trying to connect, we were finding lack of connection and disconnect and leaving interactions feeling more alone and lonely than when we went in, and thinking we were going to relate with somebody but feeling more misunderstood, or that things were now harder between each other. Also seeing the ways that I used to get attention and it used to be more loving and caring and affectionate and people seeming concerned about me. Now is I'm getting attention, but people are annoyed with me. And that'll happen a lot of times when we are outgrowing our patterns. So we've seen that it's not working. That was kind of our initiation call, like shit's got to change. It's not giving me what I'm actually looking for anymore. But why do we do it at the beginning? Because we want to be connected. Because we came here to have fun. We came here to know ourselves. And to know ourselves is not to know our story and our trauma, because we're so much more than that. We came to know who we really are, and we are going to find that in our creations. How we know we exist, what it is we came to bring, what's special and unique about us is going to be expressed by and through what we choose to create here. And I do not believe that anybody came here to have a bad time. We came to know ourselves, create new shit, find new ways of being, and have fun connecting with other people, because that's fun. Oh, and our brains are patterned that way because we're social animals, and that's just part of what we signed up for here. Yay! Okay, so remembering that happiness, joy, peace, calm, flow, ease, that's why we're actually doing the work. And in doing the work, there are going to be times when it is anything but that. But the why we're doing it is because of what's on the other side. Because when we're up against something and it's really not fun, it's usually because we have some level of resistance. And the resistance is because we have some sort of identification with an attachment to a limiting belief, a point of view, operating belief about how the world works, an idea of who we are, that the idea of separating from that is what seems painful. But on the other side of that is freedom and fun. Okay? Now, with this, knowing that our current way of being isn't working, and so things aren't showing up the way that we'd like, we're not feeling good in our bodies and our lives, we're not getting the attention and connection that we'd like. So we've got this call to change. We start changing and we start to get information. Now, where a lot of us also get lost, and unfortunately what conventional treatment will tend to have us do, is to really value the why, meaning the understanding. To seek understanding of why something happened. And that's the why that will keep us in a story. So you can see how sometimes these power hours, JOYLYN, you always talk about why as in understanding and the addiction to understanding, it keeps us stuck. And now you're talking about the power of why and how powerful it is. We have to remember why we started in the first place, because that's tapping into our heart's desire. We have to be aware of our temptation to understand why, as far as explaining ours or someone else's behaviors. Because that explanation is actually simple. And there's two things about that. For one, sometimes we have to allow it to rest. I had a client just the other day, and she was like, why do I do this? Why do I keep seeking my husband's approval? I can see me do it. Why do I do it? And I said, I can tell you why. Because he's representative of both your parents. I said, which parent does he remind you of? And she's like, oh, well, this part about my mom, this part about my dad. Exactly. He's representative of your parents. You want your parents' approval. Why? Because you're a tribal being and you know that's survival. That is just your normal human patterning. But you're still seeking it. Because you either felt like you didn't have it and you weren't convinced of it, very typical, and because she's an empath, she's, came into some tougher dynamics. So a lot of us did not get everything that we needed, okay? And so now you're playing it out in this. That's the why. And then, oh, okay, and we go on, then she's like, but why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I was like, do you see the loop? When you loop back to a why and you want more explanation, you recognize you are actually in a loop. That's just another indicator of trauma patterning or some incomplete neural circuitry that's only going to lead you back to the place where you started. When you recognize that, that's when you have to pivot. You kind of just step off of the merry-go-round. This is how karma's actually going to change. You just get off the wheel of karma. When you recognize there's no winning and no matter what you do, you're going to play this out again, you just step off. So that when you see you're in this loop and you're looping back to a why and wanting more explanation even though you just got one and you're unsatisfied, that's just a conditioning and a craving. You're just going to have to set it aside. That's going to take repetition practice, okay? But one thing that understanding can do, which I think is where a lot of us started our addiction, is understanding can massage our grip so that we're gripping on so tight to this limiting belief or the way that we think things work. And when we understand something, when we start to understand and see another person in our life as an actual human being and recognize that they had different stressors, they had some generational stress and trauma, they had some incomplete neural circuitry, they had a lack of love. When we start to see a more complete picture, we can kind of release it a little. And we feel like if you hold your fist really tight and then you release it, you can feel the blood rushing back and how good that feels. It feels good because that's the freedom that we're looking for, but then we've misinterpreted that comes from understanding. So we keep going further and further into creating this really descriptive, flowery narrative that has more and more bits and pieces, thinking that is what's going to get us the release. It's not. It was actually our willingness from the beginning to actually take in new information and open up to release. So a narrative is only valuable to the extent that we use it to correct and get out of inaccurate information. Now I'm going to tell you a story about this weekend. So I'm learning from what I am reading that the first 2 months of our lives disproportionately affect the rest of our lives, okay? As far as consistent, loving caregiving. That means it's going to have to come from consistent people, a smaller number of people. That's why families were designed that they were, like generally parents and sometimes a set of grandparents, consistently responsive. And if you get that in the first 2 months of your life, that when you cry and somebody says, "Oh, sweetie, what's up? Do you need a..." and they try to get your needs met and they understand and you are loved and held and soothed. If you get that in the first 2 months of your life, even if you've got trauma after trauma, abuse after abuse, even neglect, if you have that following that, you're in better shape than if the first 2 months you didn't get that. And even if the years after that are filled with love, you're still going to have a little bit of an edge or a deficit, okay? Now, this is interesting. So then I asked my mom, hey, can I get a chronology of the first 2 months of my life? Because this could explain a whole lot of what I've been struggling with. And even now that I'm 42, okay? So, like, I've been struggling with some of this shit for a long time. So, hey, tell me about this, Mom. And it's good that I've healed to this far, because that was a tough conversation to have, because she immediately wanted to get defensive and defend how much she loved me and how good their intentions were. And I was like, I'm not interested in that. I want the chronology because I actually want the information to correct the narrative and the belief that I've been operating under, that any of this had something to do with me lacking something. There was something wrong with me, that I somehow wasn't worthy of the goodness that I could see other people having and struggling to create for myself. And also, or that it had anything that I wasn't wanted. That, like, I want to correct these things, so tell me about this. And come to find out, oh my God, the first month was fucking shit show, okay? So I'm a twin, and I'm an identical twin, and in the 80s, nobody is talking about trauma. Okay, so the first thing they do is separate you and give you your own incubator, okay? That's stressful because I've just been touching somebody for 9 months and now I'm like totally alone, okay? I came out breech. Now, what you might not understand is babies, like butterflies, use that birth canal and it pushes fluid down so that most babies come out and they can see the world and they cry and whoa, okay? I came out backwards, so all the fluid was still in my head, so I didn't see anything. My eyes were actually swollen shut for about 4 days, she said. So I'm going through all this blind. Now I'm just hearing and feeling things. You can imagine the cortisol response that's going to be coming from that, and nobody having any idea about traumatic birth experiences would say, hey, she's alive. That's a win. And it's true. But I've got this insane sensitization going on in my nervous system because I'm stressed the fuck out. I can't see anybody. I'm not hearing the voice that I was used to because they just brought us in to see our mom a couple hours a day, okay? She didn't breastfeed. That, again, was, out of vogue in the 80s, and she had other stuff going on, okay? Then we come home. We're home for a short amount of time. I don't know if it's days or weeks. I still am not clear about this. My mom actually gets blood clots and has to go back to the hospital. So one of those consistent caregivers, out of the picture, okay? The voice that I'd been hearing for 9 months, gone. And I'm left with my dad, who not a patient person, okay? So can you imagine a dad who is dealing with 4 girls, 2 brand newborns, and 2 other girls in elementary school, okay? And because he's a proud man, a Midwestern man, a silent but strong man, he refuses help, okay? So do you really think that this person, every time a baby cries, he's going to be like, oh, little one, what's wrong? I don't think so. And having grown up with him, I really don't think so. Now, I'll give him credit. This guy does better with babies than he does with any other age group, but I still just think that by human limitation, being with 4 small children, being tired, stressed, and he was an alcoholic already then. I just don't think the needs were consistently, caringly met, okay? Not that he's a bad guy, not that he didn't love us, not that he didn't even want to be there for us, but I just don't think he really could, okay? Then, we're born near the end of March, very beginning of May, so we're talking about 5 weeks here, something like that. His dad dies suddenly. So we've got an emotionally unavailable man now pushed to the emotional brink by his father just being taken away. Now, they weren't particularly close that I know of, but as far as emotionally close, because, hey, these are strong, silent Midwestern guys. They don't talk about their feelings, and they had some beef from, I guess, high school and his college age, okay? But they did live close by, and they were part of his life. And for a man, his dad is, that's a big role model. And to see him die so young and unexpected, shocking. Can you imagine? So then again, what kind of emotionality is being brought into this young, organizing brain? Okay? So we got the why. But it's only as valuable as it is useful. And now I can use that information to really let go of my grasp about any of my success or lack thereof that I believe myself to have as being part of my unworthiness, of something wrong with me, of just a plain lack or inability to do it. I can separate the judgment here and just say, okay, but because of this, and yes, at 42, I might still be having to deal with some brain issues from 2 months old, but now I can get to work and I know what I need to do. And the more we get about research about trauma and how the brain works, we can start to apply that so that we can make the gains much faster. Because here's what we've got: an adult body, someone who can logic and reason, who can use her musculature and car keys to get out of fucking dangerous situations and look in the mirror and say, I'm here, so I'm strong. I've got you, little one. We're gonna make it. And now learning what I'm learning about dissociative process and how to reacquaint the self and get the nervous system back, it's small doses. So this whole pacing, pushing, keep doing it, keep driving, keep going through hours and hours at a time, sit at your desk, finish this task. That shit doesn't work. And I'm actually going to get further faster by taking multiple breaks and getting my nervous system recalibrated, used to new feelings. You do short introductions more frequently. That's actually going to build a stronger nervous system, a healthy nervous system, faster than this long driving. I'm starting to see this in my exercise patterns and in my work patterns of where when I do little bursts of activity, I actually get more done. There's more rest there. So from the outside, it might look like, wow, you're resting a lot. Wow, you're not doing a lot. But a whole lot more is actually getting done. My productivity is actually getting higher. And I am starting to see myself as a productive person rather than a procrastinator, rather than somebody who's hiding, rather than hiding in the shadow work. And now using my strong, intense emotions as a way to procrastinate, to give me something to do other than the work that I'd like to do, to actually be who I'd like to be. Does it see how we can use everything? And here's another gift that we've got. If you're a gifted child, it's going to take you fewer reps to get this. What you've gotten is this ability to dissociate is going to give you a way to tap out and go into your inner tune, but it's also, if you're as gifted, and let me tell you, if you're attached to this gifted, you're going to also know. Even when it looks good from the outside, you're going to know when you're bullshitting yourself and say, okay, I have to stop coddling my emotions. Emotions are important and they have messages. And sometimes I'm the one using them to not do my work, the real work that needs to get done, to actually be a functional, operational, healthy adult. I keep hiding in this. Because emotional addictions, substance abuse addictions, they all actually have the same root of our internal chemistry. And all we're doing is repattering our nervous system and creating a new internal chemistry that will foster, generate, and nurture healthier thoughts and beliefs. They all kind of work reciprocally. You know, as far as your thoughts will create your emotions will then drive your thoughts. We can do them, and what's great about that is then you can enter from either side, any side. The same is happening with physicality, emotionality, and spirituality. You can enter from anywhere, to where we can never forget that we've got a spirit, because sometimes we have to know we're part of something greater than ourselves, because that's what be part of giving us context and a bit of the why that will help us let go of the story. Sometimes remembering that we're human so that we can let go of this absolute drive for perfection, knowing that that's not what we came for. That's not even possible on this side of heaven. Recognizing our physicality to know that, yeah, there's actually times when we need fucking rest. And to actually slow down is the fastest way to speed up. And recognizing, oh, what's actually going on here is I've been in this thought for so long, I created this chemistry, no wonder I'm having a hard time moving forward. Okay, let me pause for a second, breathe, change the chemistry in my body so that I can think a different thought and move forward with a different energy. So putting all these things together and remembering the why, so I can know who I really am, because I agreed to forget. And so it's been sort of a treasure hunt, but I thought that was fun. That's why I signed up for Earth School. Oh, and I wanted to learn how to master energies, emotional energies, physical energies, learning interplays with other people's physical and emotional energies. Why? Because it's a game. It's just fun. Oh, and so I could actually try something new that I've never tried before, and see myself in a way that I've never seen myself before. And I get creative. And when we do that, the content of our conversation changes. We start to become an inspiration to other people who are looking to get out of the dark. We are like the shadow. It's interesting. There's richness in it. But we also start shedding layers so that we shine more brightly and make it easier for other people. We can never do that if our why is someone else. I'm doing this for someone else. Selfishness is how you can trust it. I'm doing it for me, for my fun, to experience more freedom, higher levels of vitality, health, and happiness. And by virtue of doing that, it's going to make other people's lives easier, because confident people are easy to be around. They're not competitive. They're not trying to put anybody down. They got nothing to prove. They don't get defensive when you speak to them. Confidence is easier to be around. It's also uplifting and boosting. Confidence likes to share. Happiness likes to share. They want other people to have this experience. So it's easier to be a source of space for somebody else. You need to vent? Okay, here's your space. I've worked through this so I don't get triggered, so I can be a non-judgmental space for you to have weird feelings. Like, having done so much trauma work myself, I can understand when people want to say, I want to murder this person. I know they're not really going to. I just understand these are the words that kind of come up. When they say, oh, I want to do this, but I keep doing this, and I see him do it a million times, I can be that non-judgmental space because I've seen me get in my own way for so many times. And I don't have to constantly be on their butt about it. I can see where a lot of times what comes first is the desire, but we're not ready to match it with action yet. That's actually a legitimate stage of change. I've been there. I've written about it. I've read about it. So now I can give other people that space, because when we give them that space to figure it out on their own, they go much faster. So remembering the why is your happiness. The why is your curiosity about who you are and why you came here. The why is what you wanted to create and bring here that only you could. When you get tapped into those whys, then when we get these pieces of understanding of, oh, the first 2 months of my life were not designed to really get me very far, I can use that piece of information to correct the narrative of, well, now I don't have to wonder about if I was worthy or if I was wanted. It was just my mom had a blood clot and she was in the hospital and she wasn't available. That had nothing to do with me. Oh, now I see the stress that they were under. Like, there was rounds of layoffs when I was young, and financial stress. You know, it's hard to be emotionally available to somebody when you're wondering if you're going to be able to feed your kids. Like, oh, it didn't have anything to do with me. We can start having a more realistic worldview that's more inclusive, that allows us to go further in what we'd like to do presently and create for our future, instead of just getting locked into trying to understand the past and make it make sense. And why did they do this or that? And because they had trauma, because they were stressed, there's your, like, do you see the difference? One of them's going to move you toward where you want to go. One of them's going to get you past and swirling back. You are gifted. Your awareness is growing. You're starting to recognize the difference between the two. When it's swirly, quick, fast thoughts that get you nowhere, you just pause, create a pattern interrupt, and pivot to the extent that you can. For a millisecond, 5 seconds, but that's how you build the muscle. Short bursts of pattern interrupts is how you create longer and longer gaps to where it becomes easier and easier to do something else. That's the fastest way to do it, is to just do it imperfectly, tiny bits, and they all are cumulative. It adds up. It's better than just thinking about it forever and never doing anything. Okay? I think that is the biggest thing. And I'll stop here because otherwise I'll launch into something new, because that's what I do. So just remembering the why. Why did I start this shadow work in the first place? Why did I come here? And not these theoretical things, but to actually use your whys to get connected to your whats. What do I want to bring then? What do I want to create? How do I want to show up? To get into things that move you in, like hold you in the present and move you forward. Recognizing that these bits of information, the whys that help us understand, can massage our grip, but that feeling that we're actually going for is the release, that we can actually do it anytime. So we can actually just be like, fuck it, I don't even care, I'm just going to have that thing. We can do that from time to time. That takes practice and work. Those are the quantum leaps. Those are the Satori moments. They'll be there. But a lot of it's the Kensho, the slow burn, and just the practice in the milliseconds and the tiny pattern interrupts with breath and tapping and all the tools that you've gotten thus far, okay? But knowing that nothing is on accident, everything's a gift, and everything can be useful to you to the extent that you're interested in applying it and using it for you. It can all be fuel. Everything's a gift and everything's working out for you. I hope that you loved this Power Hour as much as I did. And if you are curious about more, there's a couple of ways. You can always join every Wednesday, half hour of this kind of riff. Throw questions in the group so that we know what kind of issues or questions are coming up for you. I am also, I have several presentations prepared. If you have a group that is looking for some speaking, somebody to come fill a slot, bring me on, contact me. This is my joy, is to bring this kind of information to the world, to bring release to larger audiences, okay? I've got a I cannot wait till August. I'm booked for a presentation and they wanted some information about boundaries. So boundaries aren't borders, learning how to use them to light up instead of burn out relationships. If you're interested in any of that, and I can create till the day is long. I love it. So get me to speak for you, and or we've got so many programs in the Happiness Clinic. Happiness Brain Training is one. That's an individual one. We've got 6-week Get Unstuck and Happy as Fuck Challenge, group challenge. Amazing change. 90-day relationship remodel, individual. Cannot believe you are such a different person from beginning to end, and now getting ready, and we're going to launch independence from all of the past bullshit is coming with Love Yourselves. It's the part of the 90-day relationship remodel, getting out of old belief system and old stories that don't match anymore, and learning more about your physiology and how to bring your body into the process, and also having more body freedom. That is weight loss, increased vitality, more range of motion. All of these things put together. Finally, the naturopathic hat went on and I was like, this body is coming in big, and how to love yourselves, all of it. The physical, the spiritual, the emotional, mental. So many options for you. Book a call for clarity and we'll talk and see which one is the best fit for where you are, to get the best change in the shortest amount of time possible. Okay? Until next week, have a phenomenal week, and I love you